Approaches to Assessment Part 2, Assessment of Learning. Assessment of Learning, also known as summative assessment. The emphasis of AoL is on the end result, where assessment informs students, teachers, and parents, as well as the broader educational community, of achievement in order to celebrate success, plan interventions, and support continued progress. Summative assessment or assessment of learning refers to strategies designed to confirm what students know, demonstrate whether or not they have met curriculum outcomes, or certify proficiency and make decisions about students' future programs or placements. It is designed to provide evidence of achievement to parents, other educators, the students themselves, and sometimes to outside groups like employers and other educational institutions. Assessment that becomes public and results in statements about how well students are learning often contributes to pivotal decisions that will affect students' futures. It is important then that the underlying logic and measurement of assessment of learning be credible and defensible. Because the consequences of assessment of learning are often far-reaching and affect students greatly, teachers have the responsibility of reporting students' learning accurately and fairly based on evidence obtained from a variety of contexts and applications. Effective assessment of learning requires that teachers provide a rationale for undertaking a particular assessment of learning at a particular point in time, clear descriptions of the intended learning and assessment processes to make it possible for students to demonstrate their competence and skill, a range of alternative mechanisms for assessing the same outcomes, public and defensible reference points for making judgments, transparent approaches to interpretation, and strategies for recourse in the event of disagreement about the decisions. With the help of their teachers, students can look forward to assessment of learning tasks as occasions to show their competence as well as the depth and breadth of their learning. The purpose of assessment of learning is to measure, certify, and report the level of students' learning so that reasonable decisions can be made about students. There are many potential users of the information. Teachers who can use the information to communicate with parents about their children's proficiency and progress. Parents and students who can use the results for making educational and vocational decisions. Potential employers and post-secondary institutions who can use the information to make decisions about hiring or acceptance. And principals, district or divisional administrators, and teachers who can use the information to review and revise programming. What are we assessing in assessment of learning? Assessment of learning requires the collection and interpretation of information about students' accomplishments in important curricular areas in ways that represent the nature and complexity of the intended learning. Because genuine learning for understanding is much more than just recognition or recollection of facts or algorithms. Assessment of learning tasks need to enable students to show the complexity of their understanding. Students need to be able to apply key concepts, knowledge, skills, and attitudes in ways that are authentic and consistent with current thinking. What assessment methods to use? The methods chosen need to address the intended curriculum outcomes and the continuum of learning that is required to reach the outcomes. The methods must allow all students to show their understanding and produce sufficient information to support credible and defensible statements about the nature and quality of their learning so that others can use the results in appropriate ways. Assessment of learning methods include not only tests and examinations, but also a rich variety of products and demonstrations of learning, such as portfolios, exhibitions, performances, presentations, simulations, multimedia projects, and a variety of other written, oral, and visual methods. How do we ensure quality in the process of conducting assessment of learning? Assessment of learning needs to be carefully constructed so that the information upon which decisions are made is of the highest quality. AoL is designed to be summative and to produce defensible and accurate descriptions of students' competence in relation to defined outcomes and occasionally in relation to other students' assessment results. Certification of students' proficiency should be based on a rigorous, reliable, valid, and equitable process of assessment. All these imply the importance of record keeping as it provides details about the quality of the assessment. Using information from assessment of learning for feedback. Because assessment of learning comes most often at the end of a unit or learning cycle, feedback to students has a less obvious effect on the student learning than assessment for learning and assessment as learning. Nevertheless, students do rely on their marks and on teachers' comments as indicators of their level of success and to make decisions about their future learning endeavors. Using information from AoL to differentiate learning. This requires that the necessary accommodations be in place that allow students to make the particular learning visible. Multiple forms of assessment offer multiple pathways for making student learning transparent to the teacher. Lastly, using information from AoL for reporting. Reporting needs to be appropriate for the audiences for whom it is intended and should provide all of the information necessary for them to make reasoned decisions. Regardless of the form of the reporting, however, it should be honest, fair, and provide sufficient detail and contextual information so that it can be clearly understood.